The snow fell heavily that night, blanketing the small town streets in silence. Only the hum of an old truck echoed in the alley where a man in a wide-brimmed cowboy hat had parked his vehicle. His name was Jacob Miller, a single dad raising his daughter in a world that had not been kind to him. Life had taught him struggle and sacrifice, yet it had also forged him into a man who understood compassion better than most. Jacob was heading home after finishing a long day of hauling lumber for a construction company when he noticed something unusual in the narrow alleyway between two brick buildings. At first, he thought it was just a bundle of rags tossed aside, half buried under the snow. But then he saw a hand, pale and trembling, reaching weakly into the open air. He immediately slammed on the brakes of his old pickup, heart racing as he jumped out into the bitter cold. What he saw made him stop in his tracks for a moment. A woman, battered and bruised, her expensive suit torn and covered in snow. She looked entirely out of place in this alley, like someone who belonged to a world far away from his small-town struggles. Jacob knelt beside her, removing his coat without hesitation and draping it over her shaking body. "Hey, ma'am, you're safe now. I've got you," he said gently, his voice carrying the deep timbre of reassurance. Her lips moved faintly, whispering something he couldn't quite hear over the wind. He leaned closer, shielding her from the snowflakes falling against her delicate face. She looked like she had been through something terrible. Her eyes carried fear, pain, and exhaustion all at once. He carefully lifted her into his arms, noticing the weight of her suffering more than the weight of her body. She tried to speak again, but her words came out broken and weak. Jacob hurried her to his truck, setting her gently on the passenger seat while turning the heater to full blast. She clung to his coat, tears mixing with melting snow. As he started driving toward the small clinic at the edge of town, she suddenly grabbed his arm with surprising strength. "No hospital," she whispered hoarsely, her voice cracking. "Please, not there. Just anywhere but there." Her desperation startled him. Jacob frowned, torn between wanting to get her immediate medical care and respecting her terrified plea. "Ma'am, you're hurt real bad. You need a doctor." Her eyes filled with fresh tears, and she shook her head. "They'll find me. Please. Just trust me." Something in her voice pierced through him. It wasn't just fear, it was the sound of someone who had everything yet lost control of her own safety. Jacob had no idea who she was, but he could see that this wasn't just some random mugging. She was hiding from something bigger, something dangerous. Against his instincts, he nodded. "All right, I'll take you to my place. It's warm, safe. Nobody will bother you there." Her grip loosened, and relief softened her features. She leaned back in the seat, eyes fluttering shut as if she had been holding on just for that promise. When they reached his small farmhouse on the outskirts of town, Jacob carried her inside as gently as if she were porcelain. His daughter Emily, just 12 years old, peeked from the living room with wide eyes. "Daddy, who's that?" "Someone who needs our help," Jacob answered softly. He laid the woman down on the couch, covering her with blankets. Emily, curious but compassionate like her father, rushed to bring warm tea. As the woman slowly regained strength, Jacob noticed the subtle details, the diamond earrings still clinging to her ears, the tailored suit that screamed wealth, the way she held herself even when broken. This was no ordinary stranger. And when she finally whispered her name, Jacob's heart skipped a beat. "My name is Evelyn Carter," she said faintly. Jacob blinked in disbelief. That name wasn't just familiar, it belonged to one of the richest women in the state, a billionaire known for her corporate empire, always appearing flawless on magazine covers and business headlines. What was she doing, beaten and left in an alley of a small town? Before he could ask, Evelyn grabbed his hand and whispered words that would haunt him. "You don't know me, Jacob, but I know you. And I've been searching for you, for years." Those words struck him like a lightning bolt. How could a billionaire know a struggling single dad from a tiny town? Confusion and shock gripped him, but her eyes were filled with a sincerity that made him believe her. Tears slipped down her cheeks as she added, "There's something you need to know, something that will change everything." And in that quiet farmhouse, as snow fell endlessly outside, Jacob realized his life was about to unravel in ways he never could have imagined. The storm outside raged on, but the fire in Jacob's small living room crackled warmly. Evelyn sat up with a steaming cup of tea in her trembling hands, her elegant yet disheveled appearance looking strangely out of place against the rustic surroundings. Emily had fallen asleep on the armchair, her little head resting on her knees, leaving Jacob alone with the mysterious woman who had just turned his world upside down. Jacob rubbed the back of his neck, staring at her with a mixture of disbelief and unease. "All right, start talking. How in the world do you know me?" Evelyn hesitated, her eyes darting toward the sleeping girl as if weighing whether she could speak freely. Finally, she whispered, "Because your life and mine are tied together in a way you never knew. You saved me once before, long ago. And tonight, fate brought me back to you." Her words sent a chill down Jacob's spine that no winter storm could match. "Saved you? I think I'd remember meeting a billionaire." She shook her head gently, her eyes glistening. "Not as Evelyn Carter. Back then, I was just a girl, scared, lost, and alone. Do you remember working in Dallas, almost 15 years ago, before you moved back here to raise your daughter?" Jacob's brow furrowed. He did remember those days, the years when he was still young, before Emily was born, when he'd taken odd jobs in the city to make ends meet. "There was a night," Evelyn continued, her voice trembling. "I was running away from people who meant me harm. You, just a stranger at the time, saw me crying in the rain outside a bus station. You gave me your jacket. You bought me food when I had nothing. You didn't know who I was, and you didn't ask. You just helped me. That night, you saved me from making the worst decision of my life." Jacob stared at her, memories surfacing of a rainy night, a young girl with bruises and fear in her eyes, and his own simple act of kindness. He had forgotten about it. Life had been so heavy back then that he never dwelled on moments like that. But to her, it had clearly meant everything. Evelyn's voice cracked as she leaned closer. "And I never forgot you, Jacob. I swore that if I ever found you again, I would tell you the truth, because that night, you became part of my story in a way you could never imagine." Jacob shook his head, struggling to piece everything together. "Why now? Why were you lying beaten in an alley? What happened to you tonight?" Evelyn's hands tightened around the teacup. "Because the world I live in is not as shiny as it looks on magazine covers. The people around me, the ones who smile in photos and shake hands in boardrooms, many of them would do anything for power. Tonight, I found out that someone close to me, someone I trusted, wanted me silenced. I barely escaped." Her voice broke as she added, "They think I'm weak. They think I'll give up. But I won't. Not now. Not after finding you again." Jacob exhaled heavily, his protective instincts kicking in. "So you're telling me the richest woman in the state is sitting in my living room, hiding from people who want her dead, and somehow I'm part of this?" "Yes," Evelyn whispered, "because you're not just some stranger who helped me once. You're the only man I've ever trusted without condition. And you're the only one who can help me now." Jacob ran a hand through his hair, overwhelmed. He was just a single dad with bills piling up and a daughter to raise. What could he possibly do against billionaires, corporations, and dangerous enemies? But when he looked at Evelyn, broken, vulnerable, yet full of unshakable determination, he couldn't turn away. "You're asking me to risk everything," he muttered. "I'm asking you to be who you already are," Evelyn replied softly. "The man who saved me once without asking for anything. The man who makes me believe that not everyone in this world is corrupt. Please, Jacob, don't let me face this alone." Her words pierced his guarded heart. He thought of Emily, sleeping peacefully nearby, and wondered what kind of world he wanted for her. Maybe helping Evelyn wasn't just about her, it was about standing up against the kind of cruelty that had hurt both of them in different ways. Jacob nodded slowly. "All right, you can stay here for now. But if anyone comes looking, We'll deal with it together. I won't let them hurt you again." For the first time since he found her in the alley, Evelyn smiled faintly through her tears. She reached out, her fingers brushing his hand in gratitude. "Thank you, Jacob. You don't know how much this means." But even as warmth settled between them, Jacob couldn't shake the nagging fear in his chest. He had no idea what kind of storm was coming, or how deep Evelyn's whispered truth would cut into his soul. The following morning brought a quiet stillness over the farmhouse. Snow glittered on the fields, and smoke curled from the chimney into the pale winter sky. Jacob busied himself in the kitchen, cooking breakfast, but his thoughts were far from calm. He couldn't forget the way Evelyn had whispered that their lives were bound together, or the mysterious danger she carried into his home. When Evelyn walked in, wearing one of Emily's oversized sweaters, she looked nothing like the billionaire plastered on magazine covers. She looked like a woman stripped of all defenses, fragile but real. She sat at the table, hands clasped tightly, as if preparing for something. "Jacob," she said softly, "there's more I need to tell you. Last night, I wasn't ready. But you deserve to know." Jacob set down the frying pan and gave her his full attention. "Go ahead." Her eyes filled with tears as she whispered, "You're not just the man who saved me at that bus station years ago. You're also connected to my past in another way. The people who hurt me back then, the ones I was running from, they're the same people who destroyed your life too." Jacob froze, his breath catching. "What do you mean?" She reached across the table, her fingers trembling as they touched his hand. "The company that fired you, the one that cheated you out of your wages and left you stranded in Dallas with nothing. That was orchestrated by the same men who were controlling me. They thought they owned me, Jacob. They thought I would be their puppet. But when you helped me escape that night, you unknowingly made yourself their enemy too." Jacob felt a surge of anger and disbelief. He had spent years struggling, raising Emily alone after losing everything. And now, to hear that his pain was tied to the same corruption that had haunted Evelyn, it was almost too much to bear. Evelyn's tears spilled freely as she continued, "I didn't tell you last night because I didn't want to hurt you. But you deserve to know the truth. You suffered because of them, just like I did. And I can't change the past, but I can fight now. And I want you to fight with me." Jacob's jaw clenched as emotions flooded him, anger, sorrow, and a fierce protectiveness for both Evelyn and Emily. He looked into Evelyn's eyes and saw not just a billionaire, but a survivor who had carried her scars in silence for too long. For a long moment, the only sound was the crackle of the fire. Then Jacob spoke, his voice low but steady. "All these years, I thought my struggles were just bad luck. I thought I was just another man life chewed up and spit out. But knowing the truth, it makes me want to fight back. For me, for Emily, for you." Evelyn's lips trembled as she whispered, "That's why I came back for you, Jacob. Not just because you saved me once, but because I believe you're the only one strong enough to stand with me against them." Jacob reached across the table, taking her hands in his. "Then we'll face it together. No more running, no more hiding." In that moment, Evelyn broke down, sobbing into his chest as he held her tightly. And though Jacob had always seen himself as just a simple man, a single dad doing his best, he realized that sometimes, even ordinary men are called to do extraordinary things. The battle ahead would not be easy. The enemies they faced were powerful, ruthless, and determined to silence Evelyn forever. But with Jacob's strength, Evelyn's resolve, and the unshakable bond between them, they had something money couldn't buy and power couldn't break. As snow continued to fall outside the farmhouse, Jacob whispered into her hair, "You're safe here. And I promise, I'll never let you go through this alone again." And though the road ahead was uncertain, one truth shone brighter than the winter morning sun. Together, they would uncover the secrets that had chained their lives, and in doing so, they would find not just justice, but healing, redemption, and a love born from whispered truths in the quietest hours of the night.